This is a walkthrough of the functionality provided by the Dealer Cortex Onboarder product. I'm going to start here with somebody who's new to the program and has just been directed to the site blindly, but they have a reservation waiting. So I'll just start with test 05. And they could enter an email or a phone number, and then once they search, if there's a waiting reservation found, they'll be taken in and said that we found you and would like to get started. So as you can see, we matched on the email, but we also have a phone number and a name previously entered. We could be working where it's just an email or just a phone number. Maybe the name wasn't added. So very flexible with what an administrator might have added ahead of time to get somebody started. There are also workflows where nothing is needed. And I'm going to say save and start. So the person will need to create a login. So let's go through that process. When you get here, you can select a password. I already have one in here, so that's fine, but otherwise your browser will do the normal let me suggest a password for you functionality. And I'll get started. Okay, so we need to go over to our email client. I'm going to do that real quick, and it's very standard functionality where I just kind of open the email, click the link, and your registration has been confirmed. Great. And I'll go back over to continue. And because I've confirmed it, I can now sign in with that email and password that I've just made. Now that I've signed in, I'm ready to get started. So immediately there are 2 items waiting for me to complete in my profile. And I can start with either one, but I may not be able to move on until both are completed. The way in which various items are ordered and dependent on other things being completed is completely configurable. So you could have one scenario where you only get to do one at a time, or you could have something where you have everything available and maybe there's a final item that's only available after all the prior things have been completed. And I'll just start here. This is functionality to just make sure that every email or phone that is included is a real email or phone that the person has access to. So in this case, just one email, just one phone. The email was actually already validated when we created our login, but if we had a second email, it would ask us to validate it here. And for the phone, this is a test mode, so I can enter anything at the moment, but normally they'd have to receive the text message and enter the code in order to have it validated. And then finally, once everything's validated, you can see we're guided towards the save button. And it takes me into the next step automatically. I can go back here and just see what my summary status is, and you'll notice that now that first step is completed. This step doesn't actually have any way to resubmit or do anything. Once those are validated, there's no further action there, and the person data is the next thing, and there's nothing else for me to do until I complete this. So I'm going to go back in, and I can just say my company, and you can see I'm guided towards the required fields as I fill them out. Main Street. And then I can save. And I'm taken to the next step. It's asking me to upload a file. And you'll notice that if I go back to the summary real quick, this new photo ID was added because I completed the other steps. And again, it's all configurable on how you want the workflow to work. I'll go back into here, and I need to enter a file. So I can add a note here if I need to. And I'll save that. And I'm taking on the next step. And here it wants a headshot. And this step happens to have some approval criteria. This can be shown to the user or not. It's all configurable. But it says these are the things that you need to do in order for it to be approved, because this step happens to have an approval on the background. And these are the same steps that will show up to anybody on the administration side when they're asked to approve. They'll be able to check these 4 items to make sure that they got it correct. Choose a file and save. Now I'm asked to complete an optional step. It's not required, so I could very well skip it. And if I go back here, I can see that I've completed many of these steps. And this optional step, I can complete it, or I can just move on to the last step. And again, asked to produce a file. It's limiting me to PDF items because that's what is configured for this step. And I'll save that. And it's going to take me back to that optional step and try to ask me to do it even though it's not required. So now I'm putting on my administrator hat, and I've moved over to the administration site to see what the administration user would experience. And I've added this blue background just to contrast, and the white background is the person site being onboarded, and the blue background is the administrator site. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, well, let's go and go to onboarding. And I'll need to use my administrator login. Okay, and I can do a lot of different stuff. There's many ways to get here, but I just know there's recent progress. I'm going to go in immediately and take a look at this one that I was just working on. Let's go into the details. And here immediately I get all the steps that they've completed with various statuses and what I need to do next as the administrator. Nothing for me to do for this step, so it just says thumbs up completed. Person data, so these 3 steps are configured that they need to be reviewed. You can see this one isn't, and that's why it was automatically done, but everything is configurable with how it's treated. So I can see the data, or I can just immediately go into the review. And once I'm in the review, I can see the data, and here again I have some optional configurable criteria, which just says, okay, when you go in to approve it, these are the 3 things, and these are all completely configurable, but it says to approve it, I need to say it's not a PO box, it's not an apartment, not a FedEx mailbox. Once I do that, I can approve. That step's now approved. Nothing else for me to do, and it would reflect the same on the user's end. I can go into photo ID, and here I can say, you know what? That's not a photo ID. I don't want that. And I can just say reject. And it's going to send that back to the person and tell them that they need to take a look at that again. If we get into multiple different submissions and rejections, here I can see the history of what they submitted, what was rejected, and be able to very clearly see where the status is. But right now, there's nothing for me to do because I've sent it back to them. It's on their plate. And I can go into headshot. I just happen to have done the same thing. That's why there's the picture of Cookie Monster. And again, you can see now that I'm the administrator, those 4 items, I need to check them all off. I can't approve them until I go through and say, these are the 4. So this is designed to be handed off to somebody to be very clear. Yes, there's an approval step. When you approve it, these are the things you need to look at. And so it guides them and makes it easy for an administrator to pass it off to a person who's going to be using it and make sure that their work is meaningful. The approval is only meaningful if it accomplishes the items you want, and we can make this list whatever it is to make sure it's clear what our approval is. So I'll approve. We can see the logo, optional, not provided. And my last one, proof of insurance. So this PDF, when I go to download it, I get this message that it's not a real PDF. So I'm just going to say that is rejected. And I reject that too. So you can see both of those are ready and waiting for the user to resubmit. So I got my rejection email, and after I click the go link, it's going to take me back here, and I can see I need to edit, resubmit this item because it was rejected. So I can just click right in, and it's going to tell me why my last one was rejected, not a photo ID, give me the same instructions as before, and now I can choose, and we'll just assume that this time the Cookie Monster image is valid. And save. Now it's going to take me my next step. Logo, again, optional. If I want to skip it, I can. And again, proof of insurance. So now you can see it tells me that my last submission can't open, and it actually tells me of all the criteria, none of them were approved. So it's given the person guidance about what's expected. It's the valid one. And when I save it, it'll take me back to that logo because it's still optional, and I don't have to do it, but it's going to keep suggesting I do the optional steps. So back acting as the administrator again, I'm over here, and let's just go to onboarding and check the status. And there's all sorts of alerts that could have guided me to this place too, but let's just see where we're at. So we can see resubmissions on both of these items, and I can go into here to review. And this time, let's just assume that was acceptable, and I can approve. And I can also go into this item. This is a valid PDF. You can see it's going to show you the whole PDF, and I can say, yeah, okay, now this works. And assuming that this was a acceptable document for the request, I could approve. If I take one final look at what the onboarding person sees, if they go back in, they can now see that they're complete. There's an optional item they didn't complete, and they can do that if they want, but the required items are all completed, and they get a message stating such.